Process of building a property portfolio to $150,000 in passive income. And so many people ask us, guys, how the hell are you doing all of this? How are you going to go out there and do it in this market? And that's exactly what this session is all about. It's about the 80-20. We're not going to dive into all the specific details of like, you know, do this. It's going to be more macro high level of like, these are the core things that actually matter. It's not about all these little, you know, minor details. It's about this. You need to create the property strategy. You need to create the property plan. You need to then go out and find the areas. Well, what data do I need to actually be thinking about? Well, you need to be thinking about these core metrics here, here, and here, and then that's going to lead you to this suburb. Then we actually go deep into Melbourne, right? So Melbourne's one of those markets where everyone in our Oz property investment community have asked, we want to learn more about Melbourne. Where are the areas to buy? And they've given us a specific area where we do a full deep dive onto it. Not only that, we have a massive announcement. As you guys know, my name is Joe, and together with Jeff Miles, we created Oz Property Invested. It's Australia's largest property investment community. We have over 79,000 members. We've created something incredible, and we're announcing it today in this live session. You get access to that. We're even giving away a few golden tickets. So you'll find out what that means towards the end of this session. But it's an absolute big one that has a whole heap of value for you guys. We go through some real life kind of case studies and things like that. Jump on this session. Let us know your thoughts. Jump in the comments and let's make it happen, guys. Let's build a portfolio to $150,000. Make it happen. What is the 80-20 that we can roll through from a property perspective? This is what we call the property process, right? Like this is super straightforward property process of what you need to achieve, what you need to be doing to be getting the results every single time you buy a property. So let's just run through at high level. We have kind of covered this a little bit before, but every time you start the process, we have a level 0, which is like foundation. So this is getting educated about property investing. It's about understanding mortgages. It's about understanding loans. It's about building your A team. It's about getting the foundation set and going back to the brokers to get your finance ready and doing all of that good stuff. Once you're finance ready, you then move to the next stage, which is level 1, which is strategy. So level 1 in strategy is all about working out who you are, where you are, and where do you want to end up, and then reverse engineering to be able to get to that point. Like I have people come to me and they're like, Joe, I was watching your YouTube. I was watching the YouTubes and I want $150,000 of passive income in 3 years. And I'm like, man, so do I. Yeah, that would be really, really good. What are we starting with here? And it's like, great, I've got, $200,000, $300,000. It's not going to get there's just no way unless you do a massive crazy development and start doing these crazy joint ventures. It's just not possible. So it's about trying to build a strategy that is realistic to get you to your goal. And if your goal is unrealistic, it'll let you know your goal is unrealistic, but also it's now pushing you and motivating you to push forward. How do you think about property strategy, Jeff? Like, I guess this is the first point. How do you frame it?
For me, it's really about understanding it's getting to that ultimate wealth goal. Like that is a little bit down the piece, but that's the bit that gets me most excited because that's where you get your financial freedom number or your financial freedom. You unpack that, but it's the steps that you take. It's the boring discipline. I hate to say boring discipline because it's like having a budget. You need to kind of unpack and understand, well, what things you need to do to get to that ultimate wealth goal. Everybody looks at the spreadsheet. They want to know which suburb to buy, and they look at that number and they say, oh, that's really exciting. I just need to go and buy 10 properties and I'm financially free. And now I think, okay, great. Now I'm going to go and buy in Roxburgh Park. I'm going to go and buy in Frankston. Those are the areas, and they jump straight to that thing, but you need the bridge to be able to get there. It's like, well, what is holding you back? So that's the way I like to think about strategy. It's starting within the mind and then taking the necessary steps to get to that stage. That's the way I think about it, Joe.
Yeah.
The accumulation, the words I can, yeah. So essentially in that stage, it's all about building the foundation, building the base to then, and that's what we're doing in the Oz property, 150K passive income portfolio. It is focused on capital growth, and you're going to be negative cash flow in a lot of that process. So and what I typically then sort of focus on, and you can decide what works in terms of property types, but the foundational builder, buy and hold, set and forget type properties are some of what work for a lot of people. We're doing some cosmetic renos and some potential subdivisions, which you can do that down the track. The time frame I put for that stage is 2 to 5 years. So this is a comprehensive how to look at, well, what does my property investing journey look like? And what you then want to think about is looking at that under market value, which you talk about all the time, great growth locations. And you want to focus on, well, how much do you want growth in the short term, or do you want it in the next 3 to 5 to 7 years? What you're focusing. I think we've gone a heavily growth focused play, and yield to make sure you're able to keep borrowing. Like, yield isn't the key focus, but it is some of the. What do you think about the Oz property portfolio? If you want to critique our portfolio, Joe.
Well, I think that our portfolio is very much accumulation focused, right? Because we need to focus on capital growth. And there's two kinds of capital growth that we can have. Kind of like what I was talking at the outset is why we're like, everyone's like, oh, you guys, you really believe in Victoria? We just spent literally $3 million of our own capital there. Like, we can put this money wherever the hell we want, but we're putting our money where our mouth is on it. But we're very heavily focused on the growth aspect. But what we're doing is we're choosing assets that allow us to build equity on the intake. So we're freezing equity in by getting the subdivision in Townsville, but we're doing the renovation up front. So
now that you've decided, so the thing that to go back to phase one just quickly, the thing that people struggle with here is they max out their borrowing capacity and we should do the financial advice. So this is not financial advice. Go and speak to your broker, accountant. This is just our general experience and knowledge and understanding. So may not apply to you, but focus on building to leaving some borrowing capacity in your personal name. So in that way, you can start to, in the consolidation phase, you've got some room there to start utilizing the trust using structures, whether that be like self-managed super fund is its own structure, so that'll have its own borrowing capacity, but also consider the trust as well, which if you're working with investment savvy broker, which you've had a couple on, there is the ability to make sure that if it's either paying for itself, if you go to the right lender, you can continue to buy properties. It's not unlimited. You need to buy under the right parameters or go to the right lender. So, but in this consolidation stage, I'm going to say growth is still important. So we've not hit this yet. I'd say we'll probably hit it in a year or two, maybe, Joe, depending on what the conversation between Joe and myself. This is where you start to balance out the cash flow versus growth. And Joe and I may disagree on this as to how building, but I think it's where you start to, like, we've got that frozen equity, as it says, the subdivision up in Townsville. You start to chop off that back if you want to start to reduce that debt, or you build a granny flat. It gives you options, or the unit block, you start to convert that into strata title, many different options, or you do that cosmetic renovation to add the value, depending on the property strategy that you're taking on. If you're doing the slow lane, then maybe you don't do anything. But it's just all determined. So that's why I said 3 to 8 years in this stage. If you're taking the slow lane, it's likely it's going to take you at least 8 years. So there's a lot of words here. I won't go through all that.
No, I mean, it makes a good point, because it's kind of making you realize that there is a bit of a glass ceiling. And unfortunately, this is what people hit sometimes without realizing that there is a glass ceiling. So they'll max out their borrowing capacities before they start thinking about trust lending and doing all of that kind of stuff. And then that can sometimes hamstring those people to not allow them to continue borrowing. But that's okay, because, like, for instance, if you bought in WA in 2020, 2021, 2022, like, and that asset is the thing that's holding you back, you can capitalize. Like, selling a property is not the worst thing in the world to do. Like, recycling that capital, all we're trying to do as property investors is to allocate the capital as best we can. This is the capital that we have access to. This is the utilization of the capital. That's all investors do. You have a chat with Warren Buffett, he's just going to say, all I'm doing is moving money around and shifting the capital. That's all we're doing as property investors. We're buying the best property in the best location at the best price. And then we're trying to go out there and maximize our portfolio. And then, great, well, I can't borrow anymore. Well, if I've got an asset that's in a market that is stagnating or going down, maybe I'm best selling this property, getting the money and moving on to the next one. Maybe Maybe, just maybe. Got to crunch the numbers to find that out.
Exactly. This one generally is going to take people 5 to 10 years, maybe 15, but 5 years is an exceptional. So we're talking a journey of around 10 to 12 years. So this is accumulate. This is the state. Yeah. So over time. So I need to probably make that a bit clearer, but that likely the quickest you can do it is about 10 to 12 years for everyday people. And that's if you're a really active investor. That's if you're doing developments, if you're doing renovation flips. That's if you're taking the Autobahn, as Joe likes to say. So what this means, though, and what this looks like is it's a focus on cash flow property. It's not saying you're not going to see growth, but it's about getting that commercial property deal. You're getting more unit blocks potentially, just anything that increases the yield. So you've essentially achieved what you want to do. Now it's time to enjoy the fruits of your labor. It's time to, and some people might say, well, look, I want to keep building and build legacy, and that's fine. Maybe that's a stage 4 or phase 4. But for me, what that looks like then is your ultimate wealth goal. And it focuses then on maximizing cash flow and potentially some loan strategy in there, recasting the loan term. So what that means is, let's just say you've had a loan for 10 years. You reset that out to 30 years, and then that means you increases your cash flow. Yes, you're going to pay more interest as well, but it just means that you're bringing forward that financial freedom, your ultimate wealth goal.
Yep, 100%.
What are those core fundamental things, the 80-20 of where to buy? Like, how do we figure out where we're going to buy, Joe?
Well, this is where we create our little property plan, because you've got to create your property plan or your buyer brief, because the buyer brief is what dictates the purchase. So like, just think about it this way. You have, okay, I need to go buy an investment property. The broker says I've got $800,000, but I'm going to buy something that's like 600 to 800 or something like that. I reckon maybe $1 million. Where the hell are you going to look? Like, it's so hard. There's so many suburbs out when you've got all of these things. So this is how people mess up, because they don't have a fundamental brief created. So you need to get a little bit smart about your brief. You need to think about budget. You need to think about your risk levels. You need to think about, when do you need access to the equity? Like, there's a whole heap of stuff that you need to know. What am I doing on this deal? So you need to create a brief. So let's just go, if you have a clear brief on there, like, I am looking to buy a property between $500,000 and $600,000. Based on my financial report card, I can see that I've got the borrowing capacity for that, and also I can afford negative cash flow of up to $18,000 a year. Okay, so that's probably a 3.5% yield that you need on the property. So you can then say, my absolute goal is capital growth on the outset, and I'm happy with a little bit of negative cash flow because the capital growth will outweigh that. That's a far better option. And all of a sudden, you're now not looking in these more, high cash flow areas, because you don't need it. So you've got to create that property brief. But I feel like I've gotten a little sidetracked, Jeff. What was your actual question?
No, it makes sense, Joe, because like a lot of people out there, they just decide that they need to go straight to, where do I buy? Like, where is the next big hotspot? Where's the next Townsville? Where's the next Perth? Or where's the next Brisbane or Rockhampton? All those areas. But you actually brought me back in. So good on you. You actually said, well, what is the brief, and what does it look like?
Yeah.
Follow the steps in the process. Otherwise, that's where a lot of people get unstuck. They don't understand what they need in that portfolio next. And therefore, they just go and buy the next hotspot, not realizing that if they do that, if they go and buy that property in Victoria, which, yes, in next 1 to 3 to 5 years could be the top of the pops kind of performing market, they then say, okay, they're hamstringing themselves because they're almost tapped out their borrowing capacity. So, and they're getting a 4 to 4.5% yield that's not supporting to them buy the next asset. So you and I in this, we can sort of buy those 4 to 5% yielding assets. It's because we didn't need the hotspot location. So like, you look at our Townsville deal, and this is a prime example. Townsville is very much a hotspot right now. Still the fundamentals are very strong there. And these floods have actually made it very interesting, because now the areas that aren't in the flood zone are now far more popular. So vacancy rates are now dropping again, because now people are like, the locals are like, I am sick of sweeping up dirty water and messing about with this. I'm going to go live in the non-flood zones areas.
So yeah, that's it. You've got to create your property plan. You've got to create your property brief. And then that's where you then go ahead and assess the suburbs that are going to give you those results. So if you just say, great, I've got $500,000 to $600,000, I'm looking for an area that has the strongest amount of capital growth, and I don't necessarily need to do renovations or subdivisions or any of this stuff. I'm just looking for the best capital growth. You will then start to shorten that list, and all of a sudden you've gone from 15,000 suburbs in Australia to, you know, I don't know. And before the data, you've got hundreds. Still a lot to do, but then you filter and keep layering things over the top of it to then rule out a whole bunch. So it's not actually about trying to find a needle in the haystack. It's about getting rid of the hay that's not relevant, so that when you get to the bottom of the pile, you're like, cool, well, there's 3 to 4 options here. I'm now going to research these markets, become an area expert, do my remote boots on the ground. I'm going to build these relationships with the agents. And to be honest, it doesn't take much. Like getting off market deals is building relationships with agents. It doesn't take as much as you would initially think.
So the tips that I want to sort of focus on, this is if for those people struggling to find, because this is something people asked about a couple of weeks ago. How do you find those property deals? It's about focusing. I alluded to this earlier. It's about those key agents you need to have those conversations with. And it's either those ones, and Joe will have lots of insights on this as well. It's either ones that are selling a lot of property, or the ones that may be out of area and are just sort of starting to pick up 1 or 2. The reason why you want to focus on 1 or 2 of those, you've got deal flow coming from one. They may be the toughest agents to buy from. So a couple of examples over in WA. We know a couple of agents over there who absolutely smashing through the deals. And you probably, I don't think we had one on a live a year or so ago. But otherwise, there can be some fantastic opportunities from the agents who don't necessarily know their products in that area. And if you can sort of come in with an appealing offer for the vendor and understand that, that's a way you can start to build that deal flow with these different types of agents. It's consistency as well. It's following up, like set the tone, like do it on a weekly basis, even if it's a phone call or a text, making sure you're following up and saying, well, what have you got coming up? And eventually they'll start to say, this person's not going away. They're actually serious, and show that you're committed that you have that finance pre-approval, as long as you have it, or as long as you have some confidence. If you don't have that, then don't lie about it. Because if you get found out, it will absolutely burn your reputation. So you need to do that. The other thing is simplifying as well. Like it doesn't have to be difficult. Like if you start putting in 4 or 5 different offers with different terms on the same property, the agents are going to say, well, I don't understand.
Yeah.
What am I supposed to do with this? Like, this is just too hard. Like, figure out what the vendor wants and needs. And if that's within your parameters, then start to make that. And that's how you start to get these deals come to you, because you start to be known as a person who just makes it happen.
Yeah. So and I think actually understanding the process of purchasing a property in that state as well is very important. Definitely. Like if you go into South Australia, for instance, you say to an agent, hey, a 14-day finance, I don't need a pest and building clause. Just send me the Form 1 when it's ready and we'll make this happen. Oh my gosh, Joe, you're not buying that house without a pest and building? No, I know. In South Australia, you get a 2-day cooling off period, which allows you to pull out of the deal for whatever reason. So if I can then do my pest and building during those 2 days, because I've spoken to a pest and builder guy and he knows, I know that he'll go out there and he does them. And then all of a sudden you've got the cleanest offer because you've got 14-day finance. That's it. And then you'll do the pest and building during the cooling off and you'll pull out or proceed if you're happy with it. But if you speak to an agent and say, great, yep, Form 1's ready to go. Have you got the Form 1? No, I don't have it yet. Great. Okay, cool. Well, when's it going to be ready? Well, yeah, we'll do it now. Great. Well, we can exchange the contract. We don't need the Form 1. Let's just exchange the contract. And then he's going to be like, oh yeah, but it kind of messes with my cooling off. That's fine. I know that when the Form 1 is served, that's when the cooling off starts. So yeah, know the market a little bit more.